Hey, happy Saturday! It looks like the audio is working. Levels look right. Yeah!
Yay!
I set things up and it worked. That's unheard of. Unheard of.
I'm just gonna listen to the stream a bit rather than just us and see.
Welcome to the interweb. Thank you very much, and Carrie. Thank you for the host.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir. How you doing? And hey, Pookie, how's your weekend?
Audio seems to be working. Seems to be doing its thing.
I may have learned a thing or two in a year of streaming. Excellent.
Wow.
Excellent. We're not a complete audio noob. Hey, Howling God, welcome. Been a hot minute since I seen everybody. Hey, I'm alive. Mostly, sort of. Enough to come back and play some games at least. Well, I don't know how long I'll be streaming. I don't know if it'll be as long as they were, but I'm gonna be back. The appointment I've been given is a little too far out to be like, I can't just wait for that. Tired, but feels fine now. I have been sick for 2 weeks. I'm sorry to hear that. I absolutely know how that feels. Did also test, but was negative. That's good news, indeed.
The podcast while you download assets.
Excellent. That is the perfect gap for us to fill. It sounds right up our alley. How's your weekend, Rage and Suda? How you guys doing?
I'm tired. It's been a busy week, not gonna lie. I'm glad it's Saturday, but even last night I was up till like 4 or 5 in the morning doing homework. So I'm in the trenches for a bit.
Welcome back to the table, Rage.
What? I'm so confused. Streamlabs said 16, but my chat thing said 15. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. That's what that is. You are spot on, bot. What? All right. Yakuza 0. I'm glad Howling God's here for this, because he may have an opinion about this game. I'm not 100%.
There may be opinions.
I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure he may have an opinion about this game. Sure, Pseudo does too. That's a good thing, because that'll give my voice a little bit of a rest here and there, because I know Rage can't.
I love this game. And I love that all the rest of the Yakuzas are mostly on PC now. I think 3, 4, 5 are on PC. I don't know if 6 is yet, but I am stoked. I have them all for PS4, but it's nice that they're more available to everyone. I think they're on Xbox too, not just an exclusive. So if people haven't played that series, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would too. I've been recommending it to a lot of different people. In the middle of WoW Classic right now, so I may not comment. Fair. 40-man rating is legit. That takes effort and attention. Much different than the 10-man stuff.
Yeah, 10-mans were hard. I can't imagine just 4 times that.
The mechanics are much simpler, but if anybody misses them, everybody suffers, and you need 40 people paying attention and not screwing up, and that, yeah.
Yeah, it was just hard to get 10 people to just show up and then pay attention. And then you always get the odd person who just wants to kind of like do their own thing, even though everyone agrees that like this is the type of run we're gonna do, and they're like, no, I'm the tank. I decide what we do, and it's like kind of, but we're gonna keep wiping. Can we stop?
Yeah, the worst I ever had was I said, okay, everybody get ready for pull, and I watched our druid turn and jump off the edge into the lava. I was just like,
I'm ready.
What?
I'm ready.
What are you doing? Why did you do this?
We'd have it where people would accidentally fat finger their procs, like their 20-minute cooldowns right at the start, and it's like, ooh, okay. Yeah, do we just wipe? We gotta need those.
Yeah, those are important. That was you only ran like 1 or 2 druids typically in like a 40-man group, and it was in Molten Core, like halfway through it. So when he jumped in, we're standing in the middle of Molten Core just waiting for him to get back.
I'm like, hey,
Just chilling.
I also played a Holy Paladin, Howling God. We seem to do a lot of the similar things. Bubble is convenient for saving gear when your raid wipes. Especially when they brought back Bubble Hearth and the expansion I think I last played, because they nerfed it out because it's just dumb that you could just bubble and hearth away, and then they brought it back, and whenever the raid would wipe, I'd be like, okay guys, I set my hearth nearby. Bye. I don't want to die.
You dick.
Hey, they died, man. It's not my fault. They'd wipe, and I'm just like, I'm gonna save my ass, because there's actually, it was a quick sidetrack, but there's a lot of fun trinkets you could get, and one of the ones we had was this dagger. I can't remember the name of it, but it let you kill yourself without taking damage, like gear damage. So like, our tank would die, and then you just see half the raid just commit seppuku. Everyone just starts stabbing themselves with daggers and killing themselves
As a
to save their
tank,
gear.
as a tank, I hope they all burn in hell.
Maybe it's okay. We paid for repairs.
I'm always the first one to die. There's no saving my gear. And in those days, tank gear was the most expensive to repair. It got really dumb. Really
Yeah.
dumb.
This was a lot more casual, and money wasn't ever a problem at this point. It just got stupid.
I bought like a regular mount per raid in just in repairs.
That was so expensive back then. I remember I saved up I think it was like 1,000 gold or something for
Epic mount,
flying level 2 or epic mount.
For the training on it.
Flying the training. And that was a lot back then. Like that took like weeks, depending on like what you had set up. And then it was like a month or two later, they released the expansion that basically like super inflated the currency. Yeah. And then made like 1,000 a week. And I think they dropped the price of that. So it was basically like what it would have been like 10 gold. I'm like, fuck. Because they're like, we want everyone to fly around this new area. I'm like, fuck. I want money.
All right. Yakuza 0 world building. Hey, Vexed, welcome. Well, let's talk about the game we came to talk about. Although talking about any game is always welcome.
We're talking about video games. This is kind of what we do here.
Well, yeah. So world building is kind of strange for the Yakuza series, because a lot of the games take place in the exact same place, and it's hard to kind of, which one do we want to say started it, which would probably be, the first Yakuza. But they all kind of add their own charm and their own, like, kind of expand on Kamurocho a little bit. As well, there's a lot of them will go to different areas that you didn't go to in the previous ones, but for the most point, you're kind of just hanging out in Kamurocho.
Even if they're all based in the same world, playing any individual one, at least with this one as an individual one, no matter what started it, it built the world for me completely. Like it was a completely flush, real, existing world.
It's
for me to run around in.
This is a place in Tokyo.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they built it really well. But they built it really well.
They also do a really good job at building the Yakuza underworld. They do a really good job communicating the structures that exist in place, why they're there. They don't go off a lot of assumptions. There are some things that, you kind of just know from culture, like, okay, they're cutting off their fingers. They're not going to explicitly freeze frame and be like, so this is why we cut off our fingers. It's, it's presented in a way where, like, this is what happens when you fuck up. In the sense of like the world itself, the city, I'm going to say it's heavily inspired, of course, by real life areas, but they do a really good job of referencing that, but also kind of keeping it a bit fresh. And I think Yakuza 0 takes place in the 80s, and they do 80s Tokyo very well. And then just all the underworld stuff and the structure, and then when you go into like their kind of comically huge palaces and mansions to go through them, it still all kind of just makes sense. And you feel like you're, in this criminal underworld that exists, in the shadows of this glorious lit city.
Yeah, all the buildings that I was in, I remember making sense. There is some strange architecture in a few places, but strange architecture happens in the real. I think it definitely deserves a good. I'm nowhere but good on the world building of this game.
Yeah.
The only way that I could see criticism being leveled at it is that it is in a real life location, so they had a very high baseline to start with. But I completely agree. Like, they just did such a fabulous job at making that part of the city feel alive.
I agree you can give it a higher bar because they're just copying something in real existence, but yeah, they still hit that bar. Absolutely.
Yeah, my only like drawbacks I have is because since this isn't the first Yakuza game and they've kind of had this before, it is kind of just that like build up on top of, especially for like the city aspect, because it's the city itself relatively stays the same. But they do, there is distinct. You can actually, you'll notice it through when you play through like 1 and 2 and of course 3. And like when you go through them, each one of them does have their own kind of feel. Like you can kind of identify, what the feeling of each world was for each of the games. And Yakuza 0 being in the 80s just has that, really kind of neon, not really noir, but just like kind of, old Miami Vice kind of crime drama. But of course, Tokyo.
Yep.
And they did a really good job at that. So even though that's kind of just the same place setting, they can really dress it up and change it up and give it those different kind of flavors. I think they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, I've seen somebody play Judgment, and it didn't even look like the same place, really.
Turns out I own Judgment, which I didn't know. For somehow I forgot. So it's on my PlayStation. I'll be playing that soon.
I've been hearing you say, I want to play that game for a while, and just happened to find it.
Turns out you've had it for a while.
I'm like, I had it because I had like my friend and I played all the, like when I was going through the Yakuza games, it was my friend and I, we would play them. He'd come over and that's just kind of what we did. And I lent him my PS4 for a while, and I guess he bought it and beat it and just didn't tell me, so it's just on my PS4. So I'm going to play that.
It had to be a good game if you forgot you even owned it.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't have guessed that it took place in the same city. I knew it was the same universe, but yeah, after watching it, that's so they're not just doing the same place over and over again. They're doing that place in that time. Is the overall take on what's being talked about there, and yeah, I can definitely see it. It had a great 80s feel to it. I loved it.
And some really nice thing about 7 is that it's, same area, but now it's modern times. And it's really cool to kind of see how things age through it. And not too many spoilers, but the people you play, are fairly older. So they kind of were there from the start and now to the end. You kind of see, they really contrast and they really bring up like, how different everything has really changed in the last like 30 or 40 years.
I look forward to playing it, yeah. So on characters, where are we, you think? It's bad?
Yeah, I think... Yeah,
so
totally.
I don't think we can give it anything but a good, but I do want to shout out just how tropey and cheesy and corny they are with their character writing, and I love it. Like I am not a fan of Yakuza as a game series. Like I don't like playing these video games, but the experience of watching and listening to these characters and how distinct and well written they are, and just the right level of cheese. Like it's like a really cheesy anime drama, the way that they wrote it. It's just phenomenal.
It's one of those things we always talk about too with like intent. It's like you can do cheese and you can do camp, but it needs to be like intentional, and you need to, put in that effort with it to make sure it's done well. And one thing what surprises a lot of people when they pick up a Yakuza game is that it's like 80% cutscenes. It's like, yeah, most of the time you're in cutscenes and then you punch a few people and then you walk to your next cutscene and you don't even care. Like most games, if you did that, you're just like, I want to skip. Come on, I want to do the action. But like there is just so much action and drama and hooks in their actual characters, and we're going to talk the storyline in a bit, that's just kind of what you play for. Like when most of the time I'm playing the game, it's not so much of like, oh, I'm stoked to play. I'm like, I just want to see what's going on with these characters. I just want to see what's happening. I just want more of this experience, which is, it's fantastic. Like just to, I'm going to try to remember. Problem with me is that 0, 1, and 2 get mixed up a bit for me. 0 is one of my favorites, so it's a bit more clear, especially since you play as a Majima, and Majima is one of my favorite characters.
Memorable to say the least. Let's just leave it at that. Once you've seen Majima, he's memorable.
I'm stoked for you to play 1 soon, because I think that's where the Majima everywhere mechanic is, and he just hides in hilarious spots. Because it's, for people to know that, so like when you're playing as Kiryu, like he's your typical like Uberman. You're just this invincible, morally just god, but that trope is so overused and everything. You would think it'd get old, but they just do it so well. and he's still such an interesting character, and he still has so many struggles that he goes through, and you're like, it's amazing they can, you know, pull that off perfectly without it being, you know, boring or cheesy. You still care about the conflict that's going on. You don't feel like there's no actual conflict when you're fighting. You're like, no, he's not fighting for himself. He fights for everyone. He fights for family. So it's like he's not going to get hurt. It's his family that are, you know, that he's protecting. And then Majima is just this like chaotic.
I think you can stop there.
He's just chaotic.
Yeah.
Chaotic.
No, without going into too many spoilers, right? You know,
he's not like, he's neutral, but he's like the opposite of Kira in that sense, where like Kira is very kind of lawful. He's very, you know, he's got a set of code he lives by. He does his things, you know, the way that he views as right. And Majima-san is just wild, where Kira is just restrained, and having them mixed together is just hilarious and fantastic. And then in one, Majima just wants to fight Kira, not because he doesn't like him, it's just because he knows he's strong, and he just likes strong opponents, and it's just like a sparring kind of thing. And he just pops out of nowhere, just being like, "Fight me! I want to see how strong you are." And he'll hide in like traffic cones and shit, and it's just, I don't know, it's just an amazing character. Every time I see him, I just get happy because you can hear his distinct like yell that he does, his little like cry that he whimpers out. And it's just like, oh, it's Majima-san.
And we'll get to talk about this again when I play one, because that's coming up next.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
It sure is. Storyline. So let's try not to give too many spoilers here, because we're trying to get people to play it. They're watching, like looking at it too.
Yeah.
So let's keep that in mind, but play it for the story. Yeah,
well,
just do it.
All I can really say is the game is like 80% cutscenes, and you won't care. You'll want more. And
I like the way Howling God phrased it.
Perfected the movie game.
I like the way that Howling God phrased it. It's a shonen crime drama that is perfectly written.
Yeah, from like start to end, and like a lot of games, you know, fall off in that middle area. And I think Yakuza is one of those series that can actually be pretty strong in its middle. It's got not just a typical, you know, beginning, middle, climax, end. There's a lot of subplots that go on, and a lot of middle conflicts, and a lot of like multiple layered stories baked in. So you're not just, you know, one payoff. There's multiple things going on, and you're just encapsulated in the entire thing so much.
Yeah, completely floored by it. I went in expecting just like to run around and punch some things and have some silly action fun, and got like one of the best stories I've ever seen. Like it's easily better than a large majority of the movies I've seen in my life. They don't even compare.
I mean, to be fair, you do seek out crappy movies.
But I love those movies. And this has all that camp and cheese, right? So
yeah,
it's
incredibly
just
well done B movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just the substance they managed to get through, especially since like even like because we experience it through subs, and unfortunately just sometimes through subs and translation, a lot of that meaning can get lost, and a lot of stuff can kind of, you know, people who have watched anime with a fan dub or a fan sub will notice this too. It's actually really hard to translate this stuff properly, especially in the beginning. And even on that front, it's done like so well. And we'll get to that, but the vocal performances like really sell a lot of this stuff too. And it's in a different style than we're kind of used to on the Western front of things. But even though you're not understanding what they're saying, just the amount of emotion in the performances, it really is just like a movie. It's a full, well orchestrated, like dramatic crime thriller. And it's just like I was blown away and surprised by it, and I wasn't expecting too much a lot of times when I played this series, and just time after time they just nail it. There's not much I would say to improve it. There's minor nitpick stuff where like I won't spoil it, but there's certain things that happen that Kira does. I think Howling God and I meme about this. But it just certain parts of the game of all of a sudden, I say it has to do when you're driving on a highway, that just felt a little bit out of place and a bit kind of weird on the action movie front. But it's a very small part of the game, and it was still
which game?
0, okay. I believe it is. I think I see. There's one of the things that kind of mixes up for me. I'm going to quickly Google this.
I
Yeah,
don't
it
remember
is.
driving down a...
You're not driving. You're in the passenger seat, and there's people chasing you and stuff, and a helicopter. I won't spoil too much, but there's things that Kira does there that feel out of place. And I'll avoid spoilers, but it's like one small little nitpick thing, and then they just never reference it or think about it again. And then it's that was what the only time I felt was like, okay, this was like we wanted an action scene, we needed to put this in here. It doesn't really fit our narrative too much.
Can't be cameo.
Yeah,
That's
but
fine. Can't be cameos are totally acceptable. That is the series. It's like super fantastic, serious story intermixed with ridiculous campy cheese and just perfectly woven together.
And it works so well.
It is perfectly done. Perfectly done. And I ran it on computer, and my computer's not weak. Not super high end, but it's not weak. And it ran fantastically. But it is an old game. But it runs fantastically.
I have it for PS4, but I was on a PS4 Pro, but I've never really had an issue. It's most likely, I believe, as with most console games kind of run, that it is 30 FPS. I don't know if it's locked or not. Probably not on PC. It's probably not locked, but there's not a whole lot in the game. Yeah. Like when you're fighting, there's only like probably 5 or 6 max at a time. They don't throw too much at you, so for the systems to handle it, it's not too much. The game will run well.
Yeah. It was definitely not 30 FPS on my PC. Definitely looking better than 30 FPS.
And I would imagine like the frame pacing on console is probably pretty good as well. Like frame time consistency is the number one thing to go for when you're doing a console release as far as performance. So yeah. I would imagine it's fine.
Yeah, there's no stuttering. It's the thing, and like a locked 30 with fantastic frame time will feel better than 60 with a jittering frame time. And you'll it's get to the point where you probably actually think the 30 FPS is running higher than at 60 if you're not getting consistent frame time, just from kind of how jarring and how jittery that can get, especially if you're dipping to below 30.
Well said. This game did none of it. And I loved its animations.
So can I vent a little bit?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
But I still absolutely love the smashing guy
overhead
with like traffic cones and stuff, and head just being like,
I love the ridiculous over the topness of the animations, but all of the like standard animations in the game kind of suck. Like they're all kind of shit. They're very stiff. They don't necessarily connect with things like your standard big haymakers. I'm gonna fight a guy, and then like you're like, I'm gonna get the door handle. I mean the door handle. Like it's just drives me crazy.
I liked the fighting. I understand what you're talking about with the reaching out for like default animation of just put hand forward. I'm interacting with something.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of animation like jumping and kind of snapping. And the snapping happens quite a bit. And a lot of animations are kind of just the pre-baked play when you hit people, and it can be a bit jarring too, where you'll hit someone a certain way and they'll react in a totally different way than you thought. You know, you're hitting them in the gut and their head snaps back, kind of thing like that.
It's just very gamey, is how I interpret that.
Yeah, it's just that arcade style.
Yep.
They improve upon it a lot in some of the other remakes. It's just kind of how that one is. It would have been too, like, it's not an excuse, but like with the amount of fighting styles they have, you know, it would be a pretty big ask for them to, you know, support when you're breakdancing on the ground, have those be there. But it's still something that could have been done. So I'm not going to say, like, I'm just going to clarify why these decisions kind of get made. It's like, if you start going in that direction, but you do it halfway, it'll feel a lot weirder than, you know, just committing to that kind of just arcade. Well, everything will just have that play animation at least, and I'm glad they kind of put that effort a bit elsewhere. But it's also nice to see in the later series that, you know, when you hit people, it plays a proper animation.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
And to be fair, I do love the little set piece animations. They're brilliant.
And the breakdance fighting was really smooth and well done.
Yeah, most of the fighting and the combos, they really kind of blend into each other pretty nicely. It gets really jarring when you get hit, and it just like plays the hit animation, and you get kind of like locked. Um, Brawler is a bit wild. That's just because you're picking up objects and then you're kind of snapping through some frames. But I mostly just played Rush and the breakdancing one. But compared to just, I guess, some of the other beat 'em ups I play, it's kind of an area that kind of suffers with the beat 'em ups is trying to keep those consistent unless you're doing like single target locking and physics. You kind of get that just bit of that jarring animation skipping.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm pretty used to that arcade style. Felt like an arcade love letter to me. Beat 'em up style.
Overall, like, I'd say it's okay. Really strong kind of finisher animations and strong like cutscene animations are fantastic. But overall, like it said, it is something that will kind of pull you out quite a bit when you're kicking people in the legs and their head flops back, or you punch them in the head and they cave in their stomach, or you're breakdancing and you get hit and then you snap to your feet to stumble backwards, kind of thing.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's still like
I think the dividing line for me is really like set piece animations are fantastic. Like things where they know where the different bodies that are going to be interacting are wonderful. But anything that has to do with like positioning and trying to adjust on the fly or like reacting to another animation that's going on really does suffer.
I think the reacting is coming from just that they're not really caring where something's being hit. So it's just, is it hit? Yes. Gives you less feedback for anything else.
Yeah, it's just it's like it's an area of improvement. It's not 100% necessary for the game to be. It doesn't make the game terrible, but it's an area that they can improve.
It's still a great game.
Yeah, no, it didn't negatively impact the game for me at all. Thoroughly enjoyed it. While I type this out, you can start talking about the style if you like.
Sure. As we said before, this one takes place in the 80s, I believe. I'm gonna assume that's right. I should probably check that, but if I remember my zero correct, it is the prequel, which would make the most sense, especially for the timeline for the other ones. And it's one of those other problems with the world building where they're kind of using a pre-existing style and referencing real world Tokyo, in a sense, in real world Japan culture. But I'd say they do it pretty well. How the characters are dressed and how they look fit very well, but are also very distinct. Everyone is, you can see them from just their clothes and without their face, and you can kind of know who most people are. The actual streets and all the neon were done really well. I don't know if I can go all the way up to. I'm a bit teetering because it's hard for me to say good when there's it doesn't really feel like a Yakuza 0 style where it feels more like 80s Tokyo and then played by Yakuza 0 rather than being able to have its own super distinct style I can reference. I do think they did a really good job on it. I just don't know how that falls on the bar between good style and okay style. They did a good job on it. So I'm a bit torn.
Well, I mean, they did it well, right? So that's good, and it's consistent, and it fits the place in the era, and it's unique.
And it's consistent between different neighborhoods. Like you can still tell that it's in the same city, but different neighborhoods do look different.
Yeah.
I think they did a very, very good job.
Yeah. So while we may like the style, we try to avoid the like or dislike part, and it still fits all of our criteria, even if we ignore the fact that we are just partial to the way the game looks.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about it more now. I guess a bit more too focused on the Tokyo 80s aspect, because that's just something I love. The 80s, it's one of my favorite aesthetics, one of my favorite eras. But I'm now thinking more about the actual Yakuza in the game, and also having 80s style Yakuza. I think they did a good job on that, having that kind of older gangster style.
Yeah.
I think they did. I think they did that pretty well. I can kind of feel that 80s gangster flick.
Low tech gangster.
Yeah.
Before cell phones.
Pagers. Remember pagers?
There's pages in the game. You get paged.
Yep.
Yeah, like I now that I'm thinking about it more, it's they think. I also, it was a really good direction for them to go. Was that that 80s aesthetic, and the consistency is the main thing. And I think it's a hard thing for me is that it's like it is very consistent, so it's hard for me to find any kind of outliers of flair. But I don't think it really needed it. I think it just kind of needed that setting, that realistic setting, to really pull you in and not have it be over the top. You needed that kind of believable style, that this is stuff that would actually be going on, rather than crazy over the top animations everywhere, crazy over the top settings and characters. It's about as well as I think it could really hit.
Unfortunately, you only get paged. Unfortunately not. But that would be a wonderful Easter egg, and right on point with the game.
With just one last note on style, I think them doing something super unique and super fancy and doing crazy things, I think it needs the somewhat subdued, realistic nature of what Tokyo was actually like in the 80s to offset the zany action that goes on in the rest of the game.
They're just
like
ridiculous situations you find yourself in.
Yeah, like it's a really nice dichotomy, and like the fact that it's set in a realistic place makes it that much more ridiculous.
The more I'm thinking about it, a lot of their like zany stylistic choices are actually funneled through Majima, which I really appreciate, because that fits his character perfectly, and the way that he's actually stylized and done. He starts off with minor spoiler, like he starts off reserved and fairly normal because he's a club owner, and then as things go on, he develops into the character we know today.
I don't know him,
and it's just
I just know that one.
Well, no, like if you played Zero, you know him. He becomes Majima-san, and that doesn't change too much. It's just from like the opening one where he's
from Yakuza 1 you're saying?
Or Yakuza 0, because he starts fairly calm at the beginning and a bit wild, but he really kind of starts letting himself go. But I think like a lot of that, I think the style they did for him too, compared to the other ones, was well done, especially for, like I said, like the 80s, making everyone kind of that the kind of gangster aesthetic that was there at the time. I think they mashed it pretty well.
Stacks of bills, gangster.
Yeah, serious. Is that still like 60s? Because they were kind of in that 60s mobster feel where everything was family, everything was about respect, everything wasn't about flash. It was about influence and power.
Yep. Being caught. Turns out flashy is not a good way to stay below the radar. Who knew? Music. Which I think I don't really remember the music from the game.
It kind of reuses a lot of the same music. I think a lot of the battle music is, I think, the same track for the most part, except for like certain encounters. But it's solid. I wouldn't go over and say it's like fantastic and this is my jam and I'm gonna listen to it all the time. But it does suit very well for the fighting, and it does suit very well for the cutscenes when they score them. There's a lot of kind of emotional scenes in the game, and you don't always notice the tracks on them, but they do a really good job at that. It's one area they could improve, though, if they just had like a really killer soundtrack, even maybe like a dynamic soundtrack for the fighting, which would be awesome. But at the same time, it's not gonna make or break the game. It'd be like one of those things where if they have it in the budget, they can improve it, and they will. But for now, it works.
Yeah, it's fine.
More or less what I was gonna say is just like what they have is fine. It doesn't blow your mind, but it also doesn't detract from the game.
Yeah, there's
that
never
is our definition of okay.
Yeah, there was no space country.
Yeah,
karaoke's fun. Karaoke's fun too.
Dead Space 3 is a low bar for soundtrack judgment, but
That one got a bad. Not very many have gotten bads in musical score. It's actually pretty hard to get a bad under musical score.
It's also surprisingly hard for it to get a good under our ratings sometimes, unfortunately. But
Yep. Yeah, it's hard to get a good
that's
or a
fine.
bad in that one. Most music in most games is just kind of okay.
It's fine.
Did fine. But the voice acting was fantastic.
Oh yeah, so good.
yeah, it is just god tier. It's one of those things where like I don't think any of us really understand too much Japanese, but you don't really have to. It's just all the emotion behind the performances is just amazing. You can just feel everything they're saying and feeling, and it's 100% believable. There's never any point where you're thinking about the person in the recording booth
They
reading their line.
They didn't get voice actors. They got professional actors.
Well, and that's something that I was going to bring up actually, because I'm a fucking weeb. I watch a lot of anime, and the way that the Japanese approach voice acting is very different than we in North America do. We have maybe a dozen voice actors who act with the same methodology as a Japanese seiyuu, which is that they take voice acting just as seriously as in-person acting. You still need to develop the character. You still need to get into their mindset. You still need to display their emotion. You can't just be there reading lines. Your performance will never be up to snuff. But the way that they have approached it as a culture is incredible and really does lead to some fantastic voice performances. Like when I hear I don't know, Chris Sabat, for instance, I can be like, oh, hey, that's Chris Sabat, and then just get back into the character again because he does such a good delivery. But there are some voice actors in North American productions that once you know that person, you start recognizing them in all of their roles, and you can't stop thinking about the person rather than the character. Name some what? Steve. I only focus on the positive.
So let's not focus on Steve Bloom then, right?
Yeah. Moving on. There's a whole cast of Japanese voice actors that have worked in anime, that have worked in film, that have worked in video games, and they all approach it with that same level of intensity. And Yakuza, while it does have a very star-studded cast, is one of those instances where you can see the intensity on display in almost every character.
Yes, I 100%. I was blown away by every moment of that game's presentation. That's why the video is almost all goods. Sound effects.
I would say okay.
Yeah, I'm with an okay.
Pretty gamey, but everything
Standard
fits.
gamey sounds that fit because it's a gamey game.
Yeah, very arcadey kind of combat sounds and stuff like that, which is fine. And all the guns I think have the same sound basically. It's a, like kind of pistol shot, but I mean it doesn't really. You're at that point where like it's not really going to detract from your experience. It's just once again something that has room for improvement. Doesn't necessarily need it, but would just take from that good to a great.
Yeah, it's definitely not the next level. What's our bar? Where's our sound effects bar? Dead Space 2?
Dead Space 2016, Doom 2016.
Yeah, Doom's pretty good.
Yeah, Doom's a good bar too. Accessibility. So I did something. I actually did something.
For our sound effects bar, Sekiro's on there for combat.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. You mean Cling Clang?
More cling clang, yet less twing twang. I'm with this. I went and I actually did this. Check it out.
Took some menu screenshots. Very nice.
So it doesn't have a lot. There's not a lot of options in there.
No, it's got.
But it did have double inversion, which was lovely.
Full
And then-
remapping, even on gamepad, which is very
I've
nice.
got that right here. The control pad remapping, which is real awesome. And it recognized PlayStation controller versus Xbox controller, and you could swap it back and forth. Also lovely. It had subtitles, individual audio sliders.
Does it have subtitle size? I think it might be missing.
No, it does not. Just subtitles on or off.
And then it doesn't have colorblind mode, but I don't know if this is one of those games that would
I don't
require.
color.
It does have quite a bit of color for areas, but they are separated from each other. I'm thinking of like heat gauge and stuff like that, and I believe that a lot of stuff you might still be able to notice there's other indicators when those things are full, like your characters.
I mean, heat gauge, it'll change color as it fills, but it's still a clear filling gauge that fills up a dark area.
And items, I believe you pick up are just shiny. I don't know about karaoke. I think those just show the buttons you're supposed to push, not
Yes,
just
it does.
corresponding colors.
And I sucked at it, but it absolutely showed the button. But I was horrible at it. Oh no, karaoke I was good at. It was disco I was terrible at. I was not willing to put the time into getting good at it. But I think that's like... is it okay?
That's solid. That's solid. That's an okay.
Yeah, especially I wasn't expecting the double inversion. It's nice to see that. And then subtitle size would be nice,
Subtitles and
especially with newer games now. It's nicer to have that, just because of large screen 4K TVs. It's become a problem where even like I'm not. It's hard even for people just to see the text in general. Like it's just tiny if you're not allowed to scale it up. And I think it was one of the nice things. And then even just like UI stuff, I think God of War 4 had the ability to increase the like overall UI text, or that might have been something I had to patch in. But I remember first playing the game the first time, I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I can't see this.
One of the things that I've been noticing recently that I really like is the ability to put more of a backdrop behind your subtitles or your closed captioning. Like you can have a fully opaque backdrop behind them, so it's easier to make out the subtitles, or some level of transparency. Big ups for that.
Yep. That helps readability and interpretability a lot. All right, AI.
It's just solid okay. It gets the job done.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Is a solid okay. It doesn't get stuck on anything. It doesn't make it super easy to just cheese it out, but it's not very hard to interpret what it's going to do. It's going to run at you and attack you.
Yeah, and you can tell that every character is running the same AI behavior. There's no, distinct behaviors between the two. Sometimes there's the larger people act a bit differently, but they're all kind of the run up and smash. It's nice that there is tweakable aggression. If you have that rare baseball card and they just start attacking you instead of waiting, they'll actually all just gang up you at once, and the game is actually significantly harder to the point where like I had to I was getting frustrated because I didn't know. Like I said, I was beating it with my friend, and he equipped it without knowing what it was. He's like, "Ooh, trinket," and it wasn't until we read it later that it's like it's so rare that everyone will fight you for it. It basically just makes the game harder. So every time I was playing Kira, I'm like, why is this game so hard? Why does Kira suck so much? Like the game is so much easier as Majima. And eventually I was going through the items. I'm like, the hell is this? Why do we have this enabled? Like, take it off. And I'm like, he's like, oh, I didn't know what that did. I'm like, well, did you read it? And if you read it, it's like,
I didn't read it. I just put it on. What's the problem?
Yeah, it was like at one of the worst times too. There's a part where it's like a gauntlet and you're like running through the alleyways and people are trying to stop you, and you have like a time limit. And if you don't beat them within the time limit, more show up. And it was just like the worst time to have that equipped, because it was like impossible to beat them before the time limit, and then more would show up, and then there was another time limit, and it was just, oh, I was getting so frustrated. I'm like, why does this game get so hard all of a sudden? And then, thankfully, it was just because of the item. It wasn't just the game was just. I thought, like, for a second, I'm like, man, this game scales in difficulty like nobody's business, and I'm like, oh no, it's just my ability to not realize what the hell I'm using.
So I've given it an okay on mechanics while you're complaining about the baseball card mechanic, but I think that's really where it belongs. There's really nothing special going on in the mechanics department. It's pretty straightforward, basic stuff with a bunch of mini games, but it's fun.
Yeah. The combat's it's neat. It's nothing that's like super revolutionary. The combat stances are cool. There's definitely a lot of other better beat 'em up combats out there. It is very arcadey. The mini games are really fun, but they're also, the mini games. They are done very well. They are all very polished, and they're not afterthoughts. But it is a certain crowd that really kind of enjoys these bit of a mindless beat 'em up with then also kind of just mindless mini games to play.
And this is the one thing that stops me from playing the Yakuza series. It's like, I love the writing and I love the style, and it's so cheesy and wonderful, but it's just kind of like, the gameplay's fine, I guess.
Yeah. It's made to be easily consumable. They want everyone to be able to play it and enjoy it and get the story out of it, and that's exactly what it is, but you're not going to get top tier mechanical gameplay out of that sort of a targeted audience. Once you start getting into those amazing fine-tuned controls that you and I just love, like Sekiro and stuff like that, it just becomes unconsumable for certain people, which is sad.
Yeah,
because Sekiro is amazing.
Sekiro, give me more Sekiro.
Yes.
The game is definitely shines through the story, and like the gameplay, like I said, it's there and it's fun, but it's not the main reason these games get played a lot of the time. It is we're trying to get through these stories and watch these cutscenes, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like it's a chore. It's also just if we took out most of those cutscenes and just had the raw mechanics there, it would be okay. It'd be an okay game. I'm not too opposed to saying that. I still enjoy the hell of them, and I've played basically all of them. It's nice to see 7, I believe it's 7, Like a Dragon, go into the JRPG style, which is kind of neat because that one actually takes a bit of effort now. It kind of turns things on its head. It's still very approachable, but it does actually ramp up in difficulty partway through the game, and you do need to pay attention to what's going on. But it's cool to not just have like that, I'm going to run in and do my breakdance combo that is just super strong and everybody dies. It's like, oh, I need to, communicate a team together and string these combos and kind of plan out. So there's a lot of room to grow in this series as well, with the model of just fantastically written stories with a bit of gameplay thrown in.
Yeah, 100% with you. Bugs. I don't remember any. Did you ever get any bugs in your casual playthroughs? I know you try to break it on your casual playthroughs time to time, so.
Yeah, nothing like, it's nothing like too like game breaking. Sometimes the items, when you go to pick them up, can just be a bit finicky because you'll just like break them or you'll miss, or just some of that stuff can like pop around.
That
like
control more than bugs with the trying to pick up items that are just not liking to be picked up.
Yeah, it's standard collision is hard parts.
Yeah. It's kind of like you'll hit people with stuff and they'll kind of just fly, and it's hard to tell if that's an intentional thing, and sometimes they don't go where you think they were, expecting. It's kind of hard to kind of boil that down. Or
I don't know if I call those bugs as much as it's just janky physics engines.
Yeah, and it's just a
little bit of ragdoll, and ragdoll's good time.
Yeah. There's nothing that's like major, nothing. I don't think the game crashed for me. I don't think it ever corrupted my save. It never, didn't do anything like that. I never fell through the floor. There was no soft locks. Yeah, overall it does feel very polished. Zero. It's a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. It's not a small game. There's a lot of QA that goes into getting all of those mini games and stuff just right, and like the claw game and stuff.
And they did
I
it.
didn't do the claw game on stream, but they did the claw game really well, like really
I
well.
cheese that game so much. I love it. You can just push them over, or you can try to stack them against the side. And it's not a glitch or anything. It's just
No,
how
yeah,
those claw
it's-
games actually function. It's what I did when I was actually there too. I'm like, I can't. Like, this thing's rigged. If I go to pick it up, it's just going to drop it. So I'm going to use the arm to just nudge it over. And then this thing is cylindrical. So then next time I do it, it's going to roll. And then it'll roll into the hole and I'll get it. Yes.
That's a great idea. I love it. I love it. But yeah, no, the claw games in it are actually like straight up physics where it maintains the state of the toys and stuff in it on every play. So you can move them around and knock them over and wedge them into each other and grab multiple things, and it was really well done. RNG. I think it was good.
Yeah, I'm trying
The
to think
use of
of
it was good. The dispersion of random groups of people attacking me was pretty good. I never had to go too far. It was never super close together very often, though every once in a while it would be just two of them and they both attack me.
Yeah,
Which was great.
It was a decent blend of like, it was there if you wanted it, but they also kind of made them spawn in a way that, if you were trying to get somewhere and you wanted to do something, it wasn't going to force you. But then the odd
Take
time,
a back alley, yeah, or you could just outrun them.
yeah, but then the odd time it would then, of course, force an encounter after a bit, so you can't just run through them all and ignore everything. So it's a nice blend of, it's there. It's not like old Final Fantasy style where you're taking a couple steps, or old Pokemon and you're just like trying to get to the edge of the place you're in and you just keep getting encounters and encounters and encounters. You're like, I just want to get out of here. And it's not, you running around and nothing happening. I think it's that nice middle ground of there's action there, and it's kind of up to the player if they want to, you'll see them on the map spawn in an alley over and you can run over to them if you want to fight them, or you can keep running forward, or sometimes they'll spawn in front of you and you're like, I'm just going to run through them. But if you, really wanted to, you could just run backwards and avoid them.
Yeah. Where are you on the RNG rage? Are you with the good?
I mean, it seems to very much suit the game.
It makes it a very casual game, but it is a very casual game.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? Like it's always been intended to be a very casual game.
Yeah.
I did like the way that they handled the encounters on the street, that you're able to avoid them if you need to. I don't know, have we given okays for like, yes, it's there, but it suits it? Or have we given goods for, yes, it's
Good.
there, but it suits it?
Good.
think we've
Because
given-
RNG is about the proper use of RNG. Like, we've given bads for not enough RNG because
And then-
it needed more in certain places.
Yeah, I think a good for this sense would be if it was, a bit too sporadic, or if they would like kind of spawn too much or spawn too little. I think the amount that it's happening is,
A well
Fairly
sweet spot.
yeah, like a fairly consistent experience. And there's certain characters who are like people want to avoid altogether, like the Mr. Shakedown, and he's a bit rarer,
And
which is
spawns in
nice.
specific places.
Yeah, so if you want to, not deal with him, he's not just going to spawn on you all the time too. So
I
I
knew
think
where not to go if I didn't want to deal with him. He might spawn, he might not spawn, but it was only in places. Yeah. I
think the actual-
loved the use of it all.
Yeah, then I'd say it's probably a good.
And all the like the location of everything around the map where it's all found, that's all set. That was an RNG. So if you know where things are that you want, you could go grab them. Everything's a tracked location.
Yeah, it totally makes sense for it to be that way as well.
Yeah.
I think damage and stuff too is all consistent. I don't think there's much randomness ever added to that. And I think for the most part, if you're not aware of there being RNG, that's usually the good spot. Because if you're using randomness, you want it to feel dynamic, but you don't want it to feel like there's gambling, unless it's a gambling game, when the player is aware of it and is trying to get lucky, that can really detract from the experience, because unfortunately we're way more aware of the times that we get unlucky than we do lucky. So even if we were, it was 50-50, it would still probably feel like we got unlucky 75% of the time.
A Mr. Shakedown is a very difficult encounter in the game where if he beats you, he takes all your money. But if you beat him, you get millions of yen.
And any money that he took from you before. And it's one of those high risk, high reward. And he's quite difficult. He will two-shot you. And you need to like pick up basically, like, if you're just going to fight him one-on-one, you have to like basically cheese him pretty hard. But you can get items in the game that'll make it easier, like guns or daggers and specialized things like that, and lots of health. But
yeah, he's a beefy boy.
Yeah, but it's an interesting mechanic, because it's very frustrating, because they'll force you to fight him at one point, and it feels like you lose a lot of money, but thankfully you can kind of get that money back pretty fast. But when you kind of want to challenge, because sometimes in the game, like the fighting is pretty easy, and you're like, you know what, I kind of want that, that boss feel, that boss challenge. You can kind of just run up to him and have that experience.
Yeah, don't look for Mr. Shakedown unless you have a fondue pot. Yeah, basically. And that's one of the things that I really don't like about Yakuza's combat is if you have an weapon, doesn't matter which one, you win.
Traffic cone. Champion.
Weapon strong.
I loved my traffic cone. You don't take the traffic cone away from me. I loved my traffic cone. That was one of my favorite things to bean people with. I took out so many guys with traffic cones.
To be fair, if you're actually in a fight and you have an weapon, doesn't matter what one, just anything, like a 2x4, you're going to win.
No, but you have an advantage.
Very strong advantage. Especially with
against untrained people, you're going to win.
Against untrained people, you're probably going to win. But if you're just against a random person, they may be able to take it away from you.
So you bring two of them.
2x4 duels.
All inventory full of 2x4s.
Do you have two 2x4s then, or do you have a 4x4?
It depends.
Are they stuck together?
Do you have one giant piece of wood that you're breaking off 2x4s off of, or did you do that earlier and then bring them?
Getting some wooden philosophy here.
Theseus's 2x4.
While we were talking, I went ahead and gave it a okay in control, because I played it and the control's okay.
Yeah, that's the impression I got as well. It was fine.
Yeah, it mostly does what you want.
I found them solid. It can be a bit with some of the fighting games, because you can kind of chain up a lot of the attacks. So a lot of these games you get kind of used to a bit of button mashing. And if you do that, it gets kind of hard to do certain combos. But overall, like I said, it's fairly okay. You kind of just run around and do that button mashing.
The combat's better than some areas, like interacting with things and picking things up and whatnot. Finicky stuff sometimes. And if two things are close together, which one you get can be a crapshoot and stuff like that. That's what brings it down to the okay for me. Yeah. But it wasn't like making me pull my hair out or anything. It wasn't frustrating.
No.
Video is good.
Sounds okay.
Audio's okay. Gameplay's okay. So it's a excellent video and writing with okay gameplay and some okay audio. The audio
which is more or less what I was expecting.
The voice acting was good, and that's what really matters in the audio. So, yeah, you can really tell where they focused on this game. The video and the voice acting.
My God, does it ever pay off?
Oh my God, yes. It was so well done.
I'm surprised that it's keeping up even after like the latest game. I was playing Like a Dragon, and I'm like, yep.
No spoilers. I'll get there. No spoilers. No spoilers. I'll get there. Yeah, I'll get there. Yeah, I'll get there.
Spoilers say it's good.
Yeah, no spoilers. I'll get there.
But it's just, I'm like, eventually you'd think that things would, because they were taking a new direction, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go.
Yeah, eventually you'd think that, no spoilers. I'll get there.
And it's just good time.
You cry every time in Yakuza. Fair. Fair.
Time for one of my favorite video games.
Have you played this one, Sudo?
I haven't actually. I didn't know this existed.
You should.
And
it was extremely fun and absolutely ridiculous.
I was like, wow, this is really cool. How have I not heard of this?
Yeah, you can get it for cheap now too. Like it's an old game.
Yeah, a bit of a hidden gem. Kind of a departure from the Metal Gear series, and that's probably why most people didn't hear about it, but yeah, it's pretty sweet. I like it.
So a little background on Metal Gear Rising, because most people haven't heard of it. It's what happens when Kojima hands over his IP to a company that's really good at making action games. So you get Platinum with their world-class action combat with the ridiculousness of a Kojima story. Is wonderful.
It's anime if anime wasn't anime.
Yeah, basically.
Although I guess it's 3D animation, so it's still kind of anime.
Kind of anime. And all the set pieces are anime as fuck. But I will fully admit I am biased towards this game. I love this game.
We'll keep you in check,
but
don't worry.
I'll do my best
we'll
to
keep you in check. That's why there's 3 of us and not 1 of us, right? 3 minds gets a less biased answer.
Exactly.
Love Revengeance because it has a doggo. True story. A cool TV series that hit me like anime recently was called Alice in Borderlands. Seen the advertisements.
Is it actually in the Borderlands universe?
Don't think so.
Because that would be pretty cool.
Don't think they got that IP.
Rip.
I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about the world building, but I'm going to limit you at an okay.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole lot of world building. There's not a lot of it at all. But what there is fairly good. So it's a kind of an alternate history sort of real world-ish situation where you're in Earth, but history has progressed differently and there are different levels of technology available than there would actually be in the time period. So the world building is very limited and they don't spend a lot of time on it because they're relying on you having played the other Metal Gear games. Like Howling God says, it follows Metal Gear Solid 4. They're relying on you having played the other Metal Gear Solid games for context. I hadn't. So I didn't have any of that context.
I had not played them
what's
either.
Going on?
So I had very little context as well, but I can just say it didn't matter.
Yeah, it's not important. Not at all important.
But it's there.
Yeah, it kind of. It's kind of
some added context. If you know the MGS, you there. But does not go anywhere.
Getting hit a bit by your noise gate there. You might want to pull that microphone a little closer to your face.
I was kind of talking quietly too.
Yeah.
Kind of mumbling to myself as I'm typing, thinking. There we go.
The new microphone syndrome.
Yeah, just getting
Still
everything
figuring out how to
tuned just right? I can also drop the noise gate just a touch. There we go. That'll help. We haven't heard a single thing, but chicken marsala sounds delicious. Sure, whatever world building it has was cut into 5 billion pieces. Probably.
Correct. So character writing.
Pseudo, you watched me play it, right? Are you muted?
You're muted.
Or did something
God
die?
damn it.
There you
No, it's
go.
muted. I don't know how that happened. It's muted in OBS. Or Ninja. I don't know how that happened. I was actually surprised by the characters in this. Like, I came in with no expectations because I didn't know anything about this series. And then the very start, it starts off very anime, and I'm like, ooh, okay,
Super anime.
and then I start getting those expectations, and then the characters themselves are of course very anime, but I still really liked how they were done, even though there are quite a few like cliches and tropes that get hit, but that's just the style a lot of these things kind of run into, and I'd say they did them well. I was more invested than I thought I was going to be, especially after the start. I was like, okay, this is what's going on, but then as things picked up, I'm like, no, there's quite a bit of development. There's kind of a lot going on, and some characters are a lot stronger than others. But overall, like
Accurate.
the very strong characters, I think were done like very, very well. Like I was surprised. I was pretty impressed. So I'd be fine with giving it. I thought it was strong in this suit. I thought it wasn't just it's one of the things that kind of made this game pretty great. It was just the few, like a couple of the main characters that was there, and like the villains are done very well. I'm kind of repeating myself now again, but it's just like I said, I was just
just end it. Just be like, it's good.
It was good. I was very surprised. Well done. I was drawn in and I cared, which is surprising for what I was expecting to go into it. And I kept tuning in just to be like, I want to know what happens. And even though it can be a bit predictable, but it's not a bad thing. It's as long as it's while they deliver it isn't in a predictable way, even though the outcome can be, is a deliverable that they did, and the way they delivered it was what made it great.
Absolutely.
And I think it hits a lot of the same notes as Yakuza does. Yeah. You forgot to change the title up above, by the way.
Damn title.
Where they're going for over the top anime cheese, and by God, did they succeed?
Yeah, intention.
The title is anime cheese.
Yeah, and it's one of those intention things as well. And if that's their intention, there's quite a bit of work to do it well, and they did it well. You don't feel like when you watch the cheese, you're not feeling like embarrassed or anything. You're feeling like hype. It's not like, oh God, what are we doing? It's like, oh yes,
yeah,
I love it.
I'm absolutely with the good on this one. I never had any other thought in my head. I wanted to see where Pseudo sat first on it. But yeah, I mean, the characters were unique, outlandish, memorable, full of personality. You felt for them. You knew who they were. By the end of a ridiculous, fast-paced action game, you knew the characters. That says everything you need to know. No, you don't normally. Normally you're like, oh, hey, look, it's some guy. He's dead. Okay, next guy. Not in this. It was so much more than I expected.
Yeah, there's actually a surprising amount of depth. Some characters, obviously, the more bit part ones are a little one-dimensional, but they're done in they're done in such a way that they're just amazing to have them in the video game. Like no character feels throwaway.
I mean, nobody comes into a story and be like, your cameo was so thin and shallow. Like, it's a cameo, man. Hey, I'm here. I'm gone.
What is for? So I would like to hear other opinions on the storyline before I say my piece, because I have opinions.
I'm solidly at an okay on the story. I remember pieces of it. It had some stuff it wanted to say. It had some places it wanted to go. But it didn't get super deep or into it.
There's none of those areas I was kind of surprised about, because I was expecting a lot of tropes here, but there was a lot of topics they covered that I was, like I said, surprised. I won't try to do spoilers too much, but there's some kind of heavy hitting parts, and some of them are quite serious topics, and it's kind of hard to do them in this sort of way. I still think they did those topics fairly well. I didn't feel like they were kind of going for a bit of shock value or being like, oh, look what's going on. It's kind of like, no, this is what happens in war. This is what happens when there's these people that have a lot of power and money and they want to get more power and money. And this is how it is. It still felt respectful in that sense of, these are still real topics being covered. And I thought, like I said, I didn't expect them to go that way. And also when they started to go that way, I was worried. I'm like, okay, typically when this happens, it happens for that kind of like shock value of like, oh, wow, look what's going on. But I was kind of, like I said, that was something I thought they'd actually do pretty well in that part too. The overall storyline, I felt was okay, but a lot of those actual parts and components, I just want to say like they did a really good job on that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Covering those topics is a risky thing, and they didn't do it badly at all. They did okay.
I would go so far as to say they did quite well with quite a few of the topics.
Yeah,
I was.
It's still fair. Like,
yeah, I was
they
very
address
surprised.
it as existing, that by mention. But yeah, it was not bad. It was better than I expected. I agree.
So I would say overall that the storyline is a good, because the zaniness of the overall storyline does enhance the game. Like it takes the same sort of themes as you would see in a Metal Gear game, and just sort of turns the dial up to 11.
If they had removed the story for a different story and had the same boss fights and everything, I think I would have enjoyed the game on the same level. Personally.
So now that I think is getting a bit into more personal opinion, because I definitely wouldn't. But
that's how it removes the opinion. Like you're partial to that story. Part of your bias, right?
For sure.
I do agree with the sense that I think the story actually did add quite a bit to the game. And I actually thinking about it more, even though I don't know so much, I actually think it is actually one of the stronger parts of it, because it is just so over the top and campy, and the action is fun. But I think what really kind of pulled a lot of that together was why you're doing all this over the top and campy stuff. And it's hard for me to distinguish between if it was just the characters that made it that way, or if it was the underlying story that was going on. But those, like the parts I brought up as well, like I think the way they did those, like that really kind of added a lot of depth to why you were doing this, and kind of you felt a bit of a sense of purpose besides just, being your typical, I'm very strong and I want to fight strong people, or I want to be a good doer. So I'm on the fence, but I do agree that it did actually, the story did add quite a bit to the game. I don't know on the story itself how well it stands out on its merits, if it was presented in a different way, if it was just, shown and not played, if it would be as enjoyable. But I think as the experience as a game, like it's, like I said, I'm torn, because it added to the game. It was really good on its own merit. As a story, I don't know too much.
I'm at a high okay. Still where I am. It was good, but
yeah, I'm on the fence. I really, like I said, I was really surprised. It might just be because my expectations weren't anywhere, and then I was just kind of like very surprised. But it's like nothing super unique all the time. But I really actually enjoyed how they did it. Like I was,
fully enjoyable.
Captivated. So I'll leave this between you, you and Rage to hammer out where it sits, because I am on the fence for this.
Well, I like what I was starting to say when we were saying, if we had told a different story, would it have made the game worse? And I'm of the opinion that yes, it would have, because of the context, and because of the fact that it is these characters that you have learned about in other Metal Gear games that are consistent throughout. And if the story had been, maybe a little more straightforward, maybe more focused around the revengeance, then it definitely would not have been as good, and it definitely would not have been a focal point of the game. But with the messages that they were trying to get across, there are some very broad stroke messages that are very easy to grok out of it, and then there's a little bit more subtlety to it as well, where you need to start thinking like, how economies are impacted, how things could be manipulated by the people in this parallel universe current timeline. So I think that there is a lot of depth there that isn't necessarily grabbed by somebody who is going in for a popcorn action game, but that doesn't mean that it's lacking. Like it doesn't have to be in your face about it, because it is still a fucking excellent popcorn action game. Like,
Yep.
You're really good at that.
Yeah, I'm with you. See, I haven't played the rest of the Metal Gear Solid series other than the first one, really. So most of the character, like all the characters in it, were new to me. I've never seen them in any of them before.
Fair enough.
So that could
if
be
you are
why
interested,
my
I do recommend
approach
watching them.
towards that could be why I'm at an okay rather than a good, though, is because I had no pre-existing knowledge or predilections towards any of them. It was just as it was delivered, and I thought it was really interesting that they thought to tackle those topics, and I didn't expect it, and I thought they did it in a fairly tasteful and proper way, but I don't know, it never crested that this is an epic story line. Maybe it was too short.
Maybe.
Could be it.
Maybe the balance between action and story was not quite right for grasping more of it.
Yes.
Because like Howling God brings up, Platinum did take a more sort of light-handed touch to how Kojima would do things. And maybe you just needed a bit more exposure throughout the game in order to get more of a feel of it.
Could be, because it is a pretty short game. Like,
yes, it's very short.
I finished it and the DLC in like 10 hours game time. What I have played in Steam, so that's pretty short. That's pretty. But like I love what they have there. They just need more of it.
Yeah, and I think what they have there elevates the rest of the game enough for it to be called a good. Like if it was just a mindless hack and slash game where you're this superpowered cyborg and there's a big bad evil guy that you got to go kill, like that would make the game worse. And that's a perfectly
no story.
fine.
Like no
That's
story
perfectly
would make any
fine.
game worse still, but.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I'm saying like if the broad stroke was like go kill the big bad evil guy, it would take away from your experience, as opposed to the broad strokes being what they are in the game to avoid spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. And this is just getting into personal preference, but maybe what's holding me back personally from the good is the level basis of it.
Yeah, I can see that, because it does provide a harsh break in between things, which is not great for storytelling.
So every beginning it's just kind of like, okay, I'm throwing in here, I'm doing this, let's go do it. There was no decision making or anything like that to get me there, to make me care about it personally. But both of you were talking good enough about it. I can go with a good. I'm fine with that.
My opinion on the writing is that it's fucking phenomenal, and I think objectively, like it is a strong point of the game.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's one of those things where if it wasn't as strong, it'd be a lot more apparent, just due to how these things kind of go, and it does kind of have to rely on it a little bit. And even though it has that, a bit of camp and definitely going anime feel, but if it wasn't done well, it would be
going
very, very obvious.
Yes. So I said the writing in the game is very good and handles some sensitive subjects well. It is a surprising part of the game that is not expected coming into this type of game.
I'd agree with that. It definitely does better with the story than you would expect from your standard spectacle fighter.
Yeah, I would like to see how they handle the story over more of an epic scale, where
Like something maybe a little more traditional to a Kojima game where you're expected to be there for like 20, 30 hours.
yeah. I think the story would fit well with a lot of development. They touched a lot of stuff in a really short amount of time. It kind of felt like that Spider-Man movie where it was like 2.5 hours and they dealt with 5 different villains, so each one was like less than a TV episode.
Yeah.
There is too much in too short a time. That is a thing.
That is totally a thing. But as far as performance goes, I did play this on PS3 shortly after launch, and it ran at 60 FPS locked.
That's great. Even
It is
on
good.
PS3, it managed 60 FPS locked. That was the 30 FPS generation. It just was. Everything was 30 FPS for a while there. It ran great. But may take some wacky hacky to get it to work right on a PC today.
Yeah.
Set your
for
monitor
instance, if you're,
to 1080. That'll fix
yeah,
it.
if you're playing it higher than 1080p, you do have to go into the config files and change things.
Yeah. So if you don't feel real super comfy with doing that stuff, just set your monitor to 1080 before you launch it, and it'll be much better. Everything will be happy. The animation was good.
The animation was great.
A billion pieces.
And the fact that they managed to get that engine to do that on the PS3, kind of incredible.
How did they do this on the PS3? That's my favorite part. At the end of the game, just as a heads up for if you're playing, at the end of the game, it will tell you how many pieces you've cut things into. So cut away. Cut away! Style.
I think the visual style is somewhat hampered by the technology that it was released on, because it was a PS3 game. And with what they had to work with, all of the important things are very visually striking, and they do a lot of it through really, really nice texture work. The environments, not so great.
I didn't know
They are consistent, but they are like
they're the background and you
kinda-
tend to be flying by them. Like,
Yeah.
don't put effort into something that people aren't going to be standing around and looking at. If you're standing around and looking at the backgrounds in this game, you're doing it wrong.
I even noticed the environments a bit in the cutscenes and stuff.
Yep.
There's a lot going on for the actors, and then everything around it is kind of like a static set piece. There were certain areas that were really nice, but like a lot of the times in like the city and even in the start, one of the first things, there's cool action, but if you're kind of just paying attention to like the background a little bit, there isn't a whole lot there, and was just like a technical limitation for the most part. You can't have there's only so much you can put on the screen at once, even if it is a cutscene.
Yeah.
But it felt a bit empty.
Yeah, it is maybe hampered by the PS3 a little bit. Because it is a PS3. But even that aside, a lot of the like stacking the first mech you fight next to any mech from any anime, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one's which.
Oh yeah, like all the main actors are incredibly well done. Like anything that's important is very highly detailed.
Well, detailed, yes, but I mean the style of it was pretty normal. It looks like a mech.
Yeah, but is that because the other mecha anime stole from Metal Gear? Because a lot of them did.
I mean, I'm even thinking of mecha animes that existed before Well, before Metal Gear Solid. I don't know. I guess Metal Gear did have mechs, didn't it?
On the NES?
That is not a good game.
No, it is not.
But yes, the first Metal Gear was on the NES, if anybody did not know that. That is when the series started.
It was bad. Ignore it. Go play Metal Gear Solid 1 instead.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 is a masterpiece. I'm not a fan of, like, it's a stealth game, and I'm calling it a masterpiece. So that tells you everything you need to know. Go play that. You remember the NES version. I'm sorry. I'm at an okay on style still.
Yeah, style for me is a tough one because I want to give it a good because of like how flashy the combat is, how well animated it is.
We'll get to that. We gave it the good on the animation.
How distinct all of the main characters are. Like, I think they're done really well, but there's a lot of things that are not done as well visually. So I'm a high okay, low good, and I could be convinced of either.
Yeah, I'm solidly okay. The combat had a lot of style to it, but that's not visual style. That's just stylish. Doom started as an FPS. Duke Nukem started as a side scroller.
So did Commander Keen.
Bucky O'Hare.
I found one of my like early 2000s Duke Nukem games during the move. I can't remember the title. Something Manhattan. Manhattan Project. Yeah, was this one a side scroller? I have one of them, and they were just wild. Yeah, this one it is it. God, I miss that era.
Memories.
Yep. Back when computer side scrollers were just level or screen, clear screen, load next screen, clear screen, load next screen, clear screen, load next screen. We don't miss that era. You notice how nobody makes games like that anymore? As soon as they figured out how to not make games on the PC like that anymore, nobody did it anymore. Guess what? Another Carmack miracle.
Yep. But back on the topic of visual style, I think the summation would be that all of the major characters are unique and distinct. Mm-hmm. Anything that's important, basically, but anything that's backgroundable is somewhat lacking, and partially because it was constrained by the PS3.
Yay, typing. Also, I noticed that my typing can't be heard by the mic anymore. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Musical score, anything other than a good is wrong.
I don't remember
You are incorrect.
That's okay.
No, it's amazing.
Rules of nature.
The music, especially like the boss fights and stuff, and you just go full anime, and you just it's amazing. I wasn't expecting that either. I don't know what I was expecting. I had no expectations. Every time I'm like, wow. I'm like, I want to play this.
Just blows your head off. It's amazing.
It's definitely enough to make you go, I should pay attention to everything Platinum makes. Because you're going...
And all of their games are almost this quality.
Because who gets given the Metal Gear IP and comes up with this? How do you get to this and keep it in the same world? And yeah, I don't know how they did. I don't know what creative minds were smoking what creative substances to get this idea with the Metal Gear IP, but I'm glad they did it. I'm super glad they did it.
What about Metal Gear Survival? What happened? Because they could have, it, it could have been bad. And
It could have been bad, but it was
I'm
platinum.
sad.
I'm just sad that there's never going to be another Metal Gear Rising game. They were thinking about doing a sequel, but after the whole Konami thing, there'll never be another.
That is sad. I may play it again one day. It was pretty fun. Thanks, Konami. Aw. No.
Now I'm sad. But voice acting.
Yeah, I already
voice
gave it a good.
It's all of the characters are again very distinct, very well acted.
Believable, over the top, and distinct.
Plus, I mean, like the
All
big
around
bad is amazing.
solid. Would say more, but spoilers. There we go.
And yes, Deus did do the Sam DLC.
Yes, yes, I did. It was fun. Took me a minute to adjust to the combat, but good. Yeah, I think sound effects were good too. Parries. And
Very, very good at
blocks
giving you
and
state information.
excellent conveyance of game state through sound effects. Yeah. I don't know if I'd say more than that. What else do you... I don't know.
I mean, there's not a lot
Everything
else to say.
sounds great. Solid and yes, solid and clangy. That sums up that game. You sound like you're smacking things when you smack them, and it's very clangy when you're blocking them.
And there's a lot of smacking and blocking.
Yeah.
Billions. Billions of smacks.
Truth.
AI fairly basic. Like the boss AIs are not super complicated. The fight AI is fairly standard. Only a couple of enemies will engage you at a time. The rest of them will kind of just sit around and wait.
Yeah, I think from what I'm remembering, solidly okay. There's no breaks in the AI. No, like,
No, there's
easy cheesing or running into buildings or failing to find you or anything terrible.
That's what I was going to say, that the pathing seemed okay, because that's usually what I notice a lot in games too. There was a part, I think, in the sewers with those, I think they were mechs, whatever enemies those were, you're trying to sneak by. And like patrolling, it's fine when they find you, they come at you pretty well. And this is also like PS3 era too, so there wasn't a whole lot of, resources available to doing like complicated AI at the time. So what was there is, it was solid. I think an important thing for games like this too is you don't feel like you're being cheated by the AI.
Yeah.
When you're fighting, it's not like because it knows what you're doing, and you can write a perfect AI, right? So, like I said, it's one of those things when people first get into game dev and they make Pong and they find it's like, oh, it'll be easy. I just have the thing follow the ball, and then you realize that the easy part is writing a perfect AI. The hard part is writing a balanced AI that feels fair to play against and doesn't just destroy you or isn't just stupid.
Yeah, that's what I often tell people when they're complaining about stuff in the AI. The hardest thing to do is make them miss. Really is. It's easy to make things hit. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Accessibility. Guess what? I did a thing again.
Yay, options menus. These ones are not good.
What? Why am I on the volume licensing center all of a sudden, Windows? What? How did you send me to volume licensing center? Did I click? Oh, I clicked the volume licensing center shortcut. That's what happened. Shortcuts. All right. Yes. Very, very little in here, and it actually took some effort to even get these. Because I had uninstalled the game. Okay. We do have dual inversion, so Deus was able to use a controller. Yay. Very important.
No controller rebinding.
No controller rebinding. We do have key rebinding, but no controller rebinding. You get the controller, it does what the controller does.
I like that note. I've never thought about that, but that could actually be a problem on the first screen you showed. Please note that this title only supports the QWERTY keyboard layout. I never even thought about keyboard layouts.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Oh god.
Fortunately, non-standard keyboard layouts are very, very uncommon. So,
And if you are running a non-standard keyboard layout, then
you know how to switch it back. Yeah. You know.
yeah. And this is the bottom of that. So we do have individual audio sliders. We have captions. We can change the map orientation, but it's really just captions, which is for mainly the voice acting, which means you're not getting all the state transferal information and whatnot. Super handy.
Yeah, the options available in this game were very minimal, and a lot of it was because it straight up was a console port.
Yeah, but it's still PS3. I think it deserves a bad. It has a few options, but for the most part, if you can't play it the way it is, then too bad.
It hits the major ones, though.
I guess colorblind's not a problem.
You actually don't need color for the game.
Lack of audio would be very, very difficult.
Lack of audio would be tough, yeah, but I mean, like...
But could you imagine trying to subtitle the parries and the blocks and stuff like that? Whoops.
I like it definitely is not more than an okay.
Yeah, no.
But it does have control inversion for controllers. It does have full keyboard rebinding. It has volume sliders. It's a third-person game, so FOV is not as important.
Yep.
It's also for like a PS3 port. They like for the time as well, just for like PS3 era.
We've never given.
Yeah. I'm adding some context, but like it's still nice that they added inversion. I don't see that too often with a lot of those kind of action games on consoles.
No, they had it even back in PS2 era where there was.
They have it, but
I see it way more often than I don't. As somebody who needs it to play the games, the games that don't have it are pretty few and far between when I go and need to change it.
That's good.
Looking at you, Alpha Protocol. Literally, I'm looking right at it. I'm looking at you, buddy. Yeah. No double inversion there. Come on. I know how much code it takes to invert the other thumbstick, and it's not a lot. Okay.
I'm surprised it's not on a hardware level yet. It's like a setting that you could just add to your consoles.
On PS4, there is. You can system-wide set double inversion.
Awesome. That is cool. Because like PC, you can do that through Steam now, and some other DRMs you can set your controller settings. I think even just if you're using DS4 or whatever, I think even they support the ability to invert. But like when it gets a bit wild, when you're trying to do menus and shit. But it's cool because if it's on the hardware level, then that takes a lot of that pressure off on the devs, and it makes a lot more sense because they just have to interface with the input, and the hardware can invert that input.
I agree on a responsibility level. It makes way more sense for the people who make the controller to be responsible for being able to invert the control.
Yeah, it seems like one of those
should have happened a lot sooner.
Yeah, it seems like one of those like solve it once problems instead of like solve it 1,000 times in a year.
Yeah. Yeah, the mechanics were great. We don't have
Yeah,
a
they
great,
were.
so they were just good. Combat
It's
is
a Platinum
fast,
video game.
tight.
They don't get any better
reactive.
than Platinum video games.
FromSoft.
I would say on a level.
Yeah, I guess not better. Yeah. Little different, but refined
Very
to
different.
perfection. Refined to perfection. And refined to perfection. I like that. I cannot say
There is a
anything.
stealth system. You don't ever have to actually use it, but there is one.
yeah,
You
right.
can actually full ghost the entire game. I've tried. It's really hard.
Unnecessary but refined and usable.
I like the collectible mechanics. I like that there's a skill check to be able to get the collectibles.
Bulls offer replayability, and the skill check on them is a nice touch for the stuff. Since it is a skill-based game entirely. Super heavy skill-based. Yeah, I can't say anything bad about the mechanics at all. I enjoyed every moment of playing that game. Parry was
Really
great.
good game.
I had no bugs. You played it a lot. Did you get any bugs in all your playtimes?
There's quite a bit of out of bouncing, but you have to be intentional to do it.
Yeah, would never give
the
bad
fact-
marks for that. It can be good bugs and still have out of bounds. That just makes it fun for speedrunners.
The problems with addressing screens over 1080p, would we consider that a bug?
Yes.
'Cause, like it is intentionally hard coded that way, but it means that it won't run properly.
Yeah, no,
on
it does
certain
not work well. Like, it needs a bit of an update, even just to add in some extra options to support some. Yeah, because I did play it on the PC one, so that counts, and it takes some major finagling to be able to play it, and that definitely.
There's also a hard lock on the first level, which is pretty great. Well, is it a hard lock? No, I guess it's a soft lock. But when you're well, you get out of it by restarting the level. But when you're thrown into the clock tower, sometimes it's just not there.
Oh, oops.
It's pretty rare to get that bug, but it does exist
But it's in the first level.
in the first level. Yeah.
So it's just sometimes you have to restart. I think that is bad. It's not terrible because it's the first level, but that's still bad.
Well, and it's also not like your playthrough is done. You just have to restart from checkpoint.
Yeah. That's still not good.
Yeah,
It's not good. It's
pretty
at
bad.
best an okay.
It's pretty bad. I think that's bad.
Yeah, it breaks the game at that point.
You have to stop and like reload, and you're completely out of where you are. And this is like, imagine if you got both of them. Like, you fought and you fought and you fought and you fought to get the friggin' thing to run. And then you finally got it to work in Windows, and then the first level bugs out, and you have to go back to the checkpoint, and you're like, nah, nah. Yeah, it's bad. That's a bad experience.
But the flip side of it is it's also incredibly uncommon, and basically the only time it happens is if you're going fast enough that the game doesn't load far enough ahead.
I admit
Like,
it's a low
it's a
percentage
problem
because most
for-
people aren't going to be going fast, but I still think that'd be a horrible experience.
It would be a horrible experience. You're never going to see it in a casual playthrough. It's a speed run bug. Like, it kills speed runs.
Okay. Speed run, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah, casual playthrough is.
We'll
I think
leave
the
it at
casual
okay.
experience. I think the casual experience wise, I don't think there was too much.
Serious work to get it to actually run in Windows. That aside, there are no bugs you should expect to hit in a casual playthrough? You didn't specify it was a speedrunning bug. Like, I was thinking just if a casual guy's running fast, he might happen, but no.
No, it's more like you beat the boss so fast that it didn't have time to spin the rust on the PS4 or PS3 hard drive to load that tower.
Yeah,
So if you've got an SSD, different. You're never going to hit it. RNG.
Yeah, I've already given it a good because there is none. There is no RNG, as there should not be in a skill. And the control was wonderful.
Takes a little getting used to. They could do a better job explaining the control to you because the VR mission tutorials are lame. But once you're actually doing the controls, they're fantastic.
I missed many a parry, but it was me not being super accurate with my direction that I'm pushing. And while that sucks having to hit two at the same time, and I was complaining about it, it's just their decision. It's just a higher skill ceiling. You've got to align your thumbs.
And once you get good at it, like, it's actually really nice because if you just stop touching the thumbstick while you're doing combat, and then your thumb's right there to parry, and you can just keep attacking.
Yeah. I ended up getting very, very, very smooth with it once I got comfortable with it. It's just different.
Yeah.
Control is different and can take some getting used to, but once acquired, it is fast and fluid, very repeatable. Tell it to. Not always what you wanted.
Very important distinction, especially for such a fast-paced game.
Yeah, there is definitely many a time where I'm like, that's not what I wanted.
But it's what your hand did. I love this game. Oh my god, I love this game.
Is it a good in a gameplay as well?
I would say the
3.
combat mechanics carry it up to a good. Otherwise, it's an okay.
I'd say mechanics and control would be the highest weighted. Based
I think
on
3v3, you would take the good.
Not very many games get 4 goods. I wasn't expecting 4 goods when I came in.
Love this video game. Love this game.
It is a really good game, though. Just so surprising in every aspect. Every aspect.
I am not a big fan of the Metal Gear series.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Like I definitely not guilty.
Neat. I love that they exist. I love watching other people play them because the stories are really good. But this game, if all of the Metal Gears were like Revengeance, I would be a huge fan of Metal Gear.
None of the current fans would be.
And that's fine. I don't care.
But yeah, definitely my favorite Metal Gear game. Hands down. Hands down. I haven't played them all, but I can tell you that this is going to be my favorite one, even before I've played the rest of them, because I know the style of the rest of them, and I know me.
Yep. Samesies.
How you doing down there, Pseudo?
I'm doing good.
Just us ranting about Revengeance for a while.
There was nothing I could add. I'm like, I was just surprised. I haven't paid too much attention to the Metal Gear series, and this one I'm like, I kind of want to play this. Just right out of the gate, seeing the sword cutting up mechanic, I'm like, that looks really fun.
Yeah, it's exactly as fun as it sounds.
And I'm like, ooh, I want to cut things into billions of pieces in slow-mo.
It wasn't just mindless cutting things into billions of pieces in slow-mo either. You have to like target things and hit pieces and...
Yeah, that's what I noticed
it makes
too.
You work
depth.
Because I thought it was just like, oh, you're spamming the stick around. I'm like, no, wait, there's a purpose. Like it's like designed cutting things up. I'm like, man, that looks satisfying to like do that and then get it right.
Not gonna lie, for the first half of the game, I was just randomly hitting the stick as fast as I could.
If you had a criticism for Revengeance too easy, did you play it on the higher difficulties? It'll kick your ass. Like fresh start, top difficulty, it'll kick your ass.
It seemed pretty hard. Like, even normal was tough. Wasn't easy. Sure. And
Pseudo, where has your lighting gone?
into the pseudo void. But I mean, the general consensus that I've heard from other people that have played it, like when I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing Revengeance next," everyone was like, "That's a hard game."
But it's probably because they didn't play the VR missions, didn't do the tutorial. That was my first experience. Like, I was like, man, this game's really tough. I can't figure out the blocking mechanics at all.
I mean, they said that they got fairly far in the game. They couldn't beat the last boss. So they must have figured some shit out. You got to understand some things to get there, but yeah. I didn't have that problem. He definitely took a few tries, but I whooped him.
The final boss is a big difficulty spike, especially if you're playing on difficulties higher than normal as a fresh start. Because there is New Game Plus in the game, you can carry forward your upgrades on a new cycle, which makes the higher difficulties much easier. But the MGR, you beat Revengeance after a few runs progressing through the difficulties. Yes, and that's why. If you do a fresh start on the higher difficulties, it'll kick your ass.
I see what you mean by fresh start. Like, you haven't played the game and jump in on a higher difficulty.
Or, have played the game, but it's a new file.
Okay. I was interpreting him as saying playing through new files on different difficulties. But yeah, I could see NG plus tuning.
Save file.
Okay, yeah. It depends how it's interpreted, but basically what you're saying is NG plus tuning is much easier than just starting a new game.
Yeah, way easier. And I would say it has the same quote-unquote problem as Dark Souls New Game Plus cycles, in that you have all your upgrades already at that point, so the first half of the game becomes super easy.
Well, it could be a lot more variable because you don't have levels in MGR.
Yeah, but you do have weapon levels. You do have health upgrades, and you do have...
Yeah, but those are all going to be fairly static. Like, there's a clear maximum to what you can get in a playthrough. So it's a lot easier to tune the NG Plus as opposed to lots of levels in Souls, where you have no idea what the level the person's going to be at. I can understand there being a worse tuning because, hey, I got 30 levels more than they expected for the tuning, so I'm going to fucking smash things.
Yeah, and that is a thing. But you can also get a lot of BP in MGRR fairly quickly. For instance, I've gotten the 200,000 BP sword in a single playthrough before. That just kind of makes a joke out of the game. Doesn't matter what difficulty you're on. So the mechanic of the 200,000 BP sword, anybody who doesn't want spoilers, plug your ears.
Yeah, we're at the end. Plug your ears for spoilers. Is
that it will cut like you're in Zandatsu mode without being in Zandatsu mode. Yes, the Fox Blade. So it will cleave through anything.
That's pretty OP. Yeah, I can see that trivializing some stuff. Yeah, if you already have that going into Revengeance mode, I can see that that making it a little easier. A little easier. I understand what you're saying. They would have to jack it up extremely, but that's just so broken. I don't think you can make up for it.
No, it's either things are a one hit or they aren't.
But it is anime as hell. Like,
oh, it's anime as fuck. I love it.
Used Sam's Blade in Revengeance.
Yeah, Sam's Blade is good. Sam's Blade is strong.
So apparently what you need to try, Howling God, is go back and try Revengeance with base gear. Wow. That seems to be your challenge now. Now
It's hard.
We
It's
haven't
really hard.
I haven't streamed all week, so I'm not going to do the game giveaway this week. I am going to start streaming again on Monday. I'll be back to regularly scheduled program, but it may only be 2 or 3 hours a night. We'll see how my throat holds up. My plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, because I miss streaming. I miss all you guys. I miss seeing you. I miss playing games with you. There's this whole list of games that I've got, like, oh man, I'm bored when I'm not streaming. I'm like, oh, I'm going to play this game. Oh, I'd really like to play that on stream. I really want to play that on stream. Yeah, I'm not going to push it, but I do want to be back in streaming. Because right now, my the only date I've been given by anyone so far, and I am fighting for a quicker appointment, but the only appointment date I've been told so far is in April. And I don't want to wait till April to start streaming again. That doesn't sound fun. And nobody wants to wait that long to have my beautiful face on camera. That's just terrible. And we've got this lovely new mic to play with that we need to get back to it. We need to get back to it. Need to cut the stream time shorter. That's fine. Exactly. Yeah. I'm not gonna thrash my throat to the point where like I can never stream again. My voice box is blown. That's not good either. We won't do that. But I want it. I want to be back. I got to start flying some planes again. It's not very often I get beat by something in a game. That just doesn't happen. And this boss has beat me for hours now. Such a hard level. I want another shot at it. Crimson Squadron must die. Exactly. Damn them.
Need to get onto Yakuza.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to this.
Yes, and Hollow Knight.
More anime drama.
Hollow Knight. I've really wanted to play Hollow Knight for a long time. I was super stoked when Rage put it on there. Super stoked.
Yeah, I think you're really, really going to dig it. I think you're going to like it a lot.
Let me see if I have my list here. So we'll quickly talk about... Ooh, that's not good. I'm working on a discount bin, which will be my way of getting to influence the game picks. Right? There's just games where I'm like, I really want to play that game. So I'm adding a discount bin redemption to the channel points, which will be half the cost, or probably just a set cost for any one of the games out of here. I'll figure out what price I want to put it at. And it'll be cheaper for you to pick these games. So I've got a few in there so far. Let's go ahead and blow it up. So that's my own personal taste. These are the games that people have been talking about, and I'm like, I really want to play that.
Good list.
So there's
there's
your cheapos. That's what you can cheaply recommend to me soon to put on the gameplay list. And don't worry, we'll continue with the Yakuza all the way through. Every time you do another Yakuza, I'll just put the next Yakuza on the discount bin. Don't you worry about that.
Good. Work our way up to 7.
Yep. I want to play 7 so bad.
I guess, yeah, they're on PC now, because conveniently I had them on PS4, so I was just going to lend them all to you. But if you want to do the PS4 ones, you can. Otherwise, they are on PC.
I'm just going to pick them up on PC. It's fine. I don't mind buying Yakuza games. They have earned the money. They may have made a lot of it, but they've earned it. I'm happy to buy them. Totally a game worth buying.
Yeah, they're not full price either. I think the whole collection's like the same, cheaper than a full price game nowadays, anyways.
And they
like
go on sale and stuff. So
yeah, I said wait for a sale and then.
All right, after Kiwami 2 or after 6? So that's a range.
Yeah, that's a far one. We'll eventually. Actually, yes, Helen God can request it.
Yeah, it'll get done. I'm sure it'll get done. And yeah, so because we haven't been streaming and there haven't been all the extra chances for entries and stuff, I'm not going to do the game giveaway this week. But we do have more games on the list. Pseudo gave us some more games. We announced them. They are awesome games. Thank you very much, Pseudo. Those are some AAA quality games in that list.
No problem. Happy to help.
So we will definitely be doing that next week. For now, I gotta rest my voice. I would like to be back later and play some online games. If we can work that out, that would be wonderful. Yeah. There we go. My mic looked a little quiet on the levels. Now it looks better. That looks much better. I think I've been a little too quiet this whole time. But hey, new mic. New mics need practice, right? So hopefully I'll get some games in later tonight and maybe even stream it. Some Risk of Rain 2 if Rage is around or something. I know some other people want it. I'd love to install the 16-player mod.
That's hilarious.
My poor processor. I've got the processor for it, and you've got it waiting for you. You just need to get your last piece for the new build.
Right there. You can trace my arm. It's right over there. You can see how bright that light is. That's
You're
the one
very patient.
I have no choice
Oh, yeah.
but to be patient.
I'd have transferred over the current GPU and all of the hard drives and stuff and have it in the new box already at this point. Dea's a very patient person.
I've been told that before, you know. I've had a few people tell me, wow, you got the patience of a god. I was like, well, I guess. I'm just stoned all the time. So, I hope to see you later on tonight, but if not, I promise to be back Monday. I do. So until the next time I get to see you, I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
And may all your shots be headshots.